A week before Christmas, I stood frozen in the hallway, clutching a box of ornaments, when I heard my own mother whisper, "We'll do it during dinner, everyone will be there." She'll never forget the humiliation. My father chuckled, and my sister chimed in with a cruel laugh. That was the moment my world cracked, because I realized my family, my blood, was planning to destroy me in front of everyone I loved. Until that night, I thought Christmas was the one time of year we came together, no matter how broken we were the rest of the year. My name's Rachel, I'm 24, and every December I return to my parents' home in Vermont, where twinkling lights framed every window and the smell of pine needles clung to every corner. It was supposed to be magical, and in a way, it always had been. My mother, Diane, loved to create the illusion of perfection. She baked gingerbread cookies in neat little rows, each iced carefully, and played old carols on the record player so the house sounded like a postcard. My father, Charles, strung lights across the yard until it glowed like the town square. And my sister, Emily, 2 years older, a lawyer in Boston, waltzed in with her expensive boots and big city stories, always stealing the spotlight but smiling sweetly enough that people called her the star of the family. I knew I didn't shine like Emily. I'd chosen a quieter path, teaching art at a local community center and saving every penny for my own apartment. Still, I thought my family respected me in their way. At least, that's what I told myself every time my mom dismissed my job as cute, or my dad teased me for wasting potential. I thought those were normal digs, the kind families made. And every Christmas Eve, I played along. I helped decorate the 12-foot tree, laughing as we argued about whether the angel or the star should go on top. We drank hot cocoa, exchanged early gifts, and for a moment, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we were whole. That year was no different, or so I believed. Emily had arrived earlier than usual, sweeping into the living room with glossy shopping bags. She brought gifts wrapped in gold foil, boasting about the cost. Mom and Dad beamed at her like she was royalty. I smiled politely, reminding myself that family was family, even if they had favorites. There was comfort in the rituals. Snow falling outside, stockings hung above the fireplace, and the faint glow of candles casting soft shadows across the walls. I felt safe. I felt like maybe, despite everything, I belonged. But I ignored the cracks. I ignored the sharp way my mom's voice changed when I mentioned my art classes. I ignored the quick glance Emily gave Dad when I talked about moving into my own place. I ignored how, when I offered to cook Christmas breakfast, Dad said, "Let Emily handle it, you just burn something." I laughed it off. That was always my role. The one who laughed, who absorbed the jabs, who kept the peace. I told myself not to take it personally. After all, Christmas was about togetherness, right? It wasn't until that night, carrying down boxes of ornaments from the attic, that I realized the togetherness was a lie. Because in the dim glow of the hallway, I heard their voices through the half-open kitchen door. "Christmas dinner will be perfect," Mom whispered. "Everyone will be here. The cousins, the neighbors. We'll let Rachel have her little speech and then..." Emily's laugh cut through like ice. "I'll read the messages out loud. They'll see what she really is." My father's voice rumbled, low and amused. "Better she learn now than later. She needs to be put in her place." I pressed myself against the wall, ornaments digging into my palms, heart racing. Messages? A speech? Humiliate me? My own family was plotting something cruel, something public. And I hadn't even seen it coming. That was the last night I believed Christmas was safe. The morning after overhearing that conversation, I woke up with the kind of dread that sits in your stomach like lead. My mother was humming cheerfully in the kitchen, spatula in hand, flipping pancakes as though nothing sinister had been whispered the night before. My father sat at the table reading the paper, his coffee steaming, while Emily scrolled through her phone, a smirk tugging at the corners of her lips. "Rachel, finally awake," Dad said without looking up. "You always did like to sleep in." "Good morning," I muttered, forcing a smile as I slid into a chair. I waited for some crack in their facade, a sign of the malice I'd overheard. But everything looked normal. Too normal. Emily glanced at me over the rim of her coffee cup. "So," she said casually, "are you still planning that little toast at Christmas dinner? About your art program?" Her voice was light, teasing, but the memory of her words from the night before, "I'll read the messages out loud," made my blood run cold. "Yes," I said carefully. I thought it might be nice to thank everyone for supporting me. Her smile sharpened. "Of course. You always did like attention." The first warning bell tolled inside me then. They were setting me up. That entire day, I couldn't shake the paranoia. Every time my phone buzzed, I grabbed it, half expecting some phantom messages to appear. Every time Emily glanced my way, I wondered what secret she was holding over me. At lunch, Mom made an offhand comment, "Make sure you dress nicely for dinner, Rachel. Everyone will be looking at you." Her words were coated in sweetness, but they landed like daggers. Everyone will be looking at you. That was the point, wasn't it? To spotlight me before tearing me down. I tried to confide in Mom later that afternoon. While she kneaded dough for Christmas bread, I hovered nervously, finally blurting, "Mom, is there something I should know? About dinner?" She paused just a fraction too long before replying, "Dinner will be wonderful, sweetheart. Don't worry." But her hands pressed the dough harder than before, knuckles whitening. She knew. That evening, I called Marcus, my closest friend since high school. I whispered everything into the phone, pacing the freezing porch in my slippers. "They're planning something, Marcus. I don't know what, but it's bad. They mentioned messages." He hesitated before saying, "Do you have anything on your phone that could embarrass you? Old texts? *TS? Anything?" I thought hard. There had been conversations with a guy I dated briefly last summer, messages that were private, stupid jokes that could be twisted if read out of context. My stomach lurched. Emily had always been nosy. She'd borrowed my laptop once, claiming hers was dead. What if she'd copied something? Marcus's voice was steady. "You need to be careful. If they try to humiliate you, don't let them control the narrative. Promise me you'll stay calm." "Calm?" I whispered. "They want to ruin me in front of everyone. How can I stay calm?" The next day brought another warning. While helping Emily wrap presents in the living room, I caught her glancing at my phone on the coffee table. She leaned closer than necessary, her hands pausing on the ribbon she was tying. "You should delete things more often," she murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. I froze. "Excuse me." She smiled sweetly, holding up the perfectly wrapped gift. "Just saying, clutter looks bad. On phones, on people's lives. Don't you agree?" The ribbon slipped through my fingers. That was it. Confirmation. She had something. By the time I went to bed, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Christmas dinner wasn't just a gathering anymore, it was a stage. And I was the target. The bells were ringing loud now, warning me that the storm was coming. In the days that followed, the house itself seemed to conspire against me. Every glance, every word, every silence from my family felt sharpened, as though I was being prepared for some performance I hadn't agreed to. Emily became bolder, her comments edged with venom disguised as sweetness. When I tried baking cookies for the neighbors, she leaned against the counter and said, "You're really brave, Rachel, giving people your cooking. Not everyone appreciates experiments." Mom laughed softly, as though it were just sibling teasing, but her eyes flicked to me with an odd tension, as if she wanted me to endure it quietly. Dad joined in too. One evening, as we hung stockings, he looked at Emily and said, "You know, your sister's always been a bit sensitive. But she means well. Just don't take her dramatics too seriously." Sensitive. Dramatic. Words that stripped me of credibility before I even spoke. What hurt more was Mom's silence. She never defended me. If anything, her stillness gave permission for the others to sharpen their cruelty. When I caught her eye, she would look away quickly, and it made me wonder, was she afraid or complicit? By midweek, I started noticing things going missing. A small sketchbook I kept in my bag vanished. A set of gift tags I had written out, personal notes for friends, appeared crumpled in the trash. I asked Emily if she'd seen them, and she smiled thinly. "Maybe you're just forgetful." The walls of the house felt closer every day. Cousins began arriving early for the holiday, filling the rooms with chatter. Yet I felt more alone than ever. Emily pulled them aside, whispering things I couldn't hear, glancing back at me with a smirk. When I tried joining in, conversations stilled, then picked up again without me. Even Marcus, my safe place, grew distant. His texts slowed, and when I asked if I could visit him in town to escape the tension, he said he was busy with work. "Just hang in there," he wrote. "It's only a few more days." But a few more days felt like an eternity. That night, lying awake in the guest room with the twinkling lights of the Christmas tree glowing faintly in the hall, I realized what they were doing. They weren't just planning to humiliate me at dinner. They were softening me up, isolating me, chipping away at my confidence so that when the final blow landed, I'd already be broken. The pressure was rising, and I had nowhere to run. By the fourth day, the tension had become unbearable. I moved through the house like a guest in enemy territory, every word weighed, every glance sharpened. I knew they were waiting for something, but I didn't know what, until I stumbled upon the truth by accident. It happened in the study. Emily had left her laptop open on the desk, its screen glowing in the dim light. Normally, I would never snoop, but something compelled me. Maybe desperation, maybe instinct. I approached slowly, my heart pounding. And there it was, a folder labeled Christmas Surprise. I clicked. Inside were *TS, dozens of them, taken from my old text conversations, my emails, even drafts of letters I had never sent. Emily had gone through my laptop during the summer, just like I'd suspected, and pulled everything she could twist into something humiliating. Some were harmless jokes between Marcus and me, but stripped of context, they sounded harsh. Others were vulnerable late-night confessions I'd typed out to friends, never meaning for anyone else to see. And then I found the worst of it, a private message I had written in frustration months ago, venting about my family. Sometimes I feel like I'm invisible in this house. Like they wouldn't notice if I disappeared. She had highlighted that one. Bold red font, ready to be read aloud. The plan became clear. At Christmas dinner, in front of cousins, neighbors, extended family, they were going to expose me. They'd twist my words into proof that I was ungrateful, unstable, selfish. They wanted to turn everyone against me, to humiliate me so thoroughly that I wouldn't dare raise my head again. My stomach turned as I scrolled further and found a draft Emily had written for herself. Rachel has something to say tonight. It began, mocking me. Then, in stage directions, she'd written, read messages here. Laugh. Watch faces. Let her crumble. I closed the laptop, trembling. My legs felt like they might give way beneath me. This wasn't just petty sibling rivalry, it was calculated cruelty. My family had built an ambush, and I was the prey. That night, lying in bed, I tried to make sense of it. Why? Why go to such lengths? The answer came slowly, painfully. Emily had always needed to shine brighter. My parents had always encouraged it. And me. I had become the foil, the shadow that made their golden daughter glow all the more. They didn't just want to silence me. They wanted to erase me. The revelation settled over me like snow. Christmas dinner wasn't just going to be humiliating. It was going to be my execution. And for the first time, I realized I couldn't just sit and take it. If they wanted a performance, I would give them one. But not the one they expected. The night after I discovered Emily's folder, I couldn't close my eyes. The house around me buzzed with the hum of heaters, muffled laughter from cousins in the basement, and the faint clinking of glasses from my parents' late-night wine ritual. But in my room, there was only silence, and the gnawing realization that I had less than a week before I'd be paraded as the family fool. I sat at my desk, notebook open, pen trembling in my hand. I listed everything I knew. Emily had my messages, twisted and cherry-picked. Mom and Dad were complicit, laughing about the dinner plan. The extended family would all be there. Neighbors, aunts, uncles, cousins. If I did nothing, I'd be crushed in one night, with no way to rebuild my name. So I decided to fight. The first step was gathering my own evidence. If Emily wanted to *p***Nye's words, then I'd use the truth. I retrieved my phone, scrolling through conversations Marcus and I had shared. We joked, yes, but we'd also talked about my sister's arrogance, my parents' favoritism. Proof that the Rachel they wanted to show wasn't the whole me, only fragments. I saved *TS into a locked folder. I started documenting the small cruelties of the past few days, Emily whispering to cousins, Mom telling me to keep quiet and let Emily shine, Dad calling me overly sensitive at dinner. Each note was dated, timed. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was preparing. The second step was Marcus. I called him again, this time with urgency. She's got my messages. She's planning to read them at dinner. I saw the folder. He swore under his breath. Rachel, you can't let her control this. If she stands up with that, she wins. You need to own it before she does. Own it? I asked. Tell your version first. Beat her to the stage. If you turn it into your truth, her reveal won't sting, it'll look pathetic. The idea scared me more than silence. Me, standing in front of the entire family, admitting to things I'd written? Vulnerability had always been my weakness. But Marcus's words rang true. If I stayed quiet, Emily's version would define me forever. The third step came from Mom. Unexpectedly. Late one night, I walked into the kitchen for water and found her sitting alone, face pale in the dim glow of Christmas lights. She startled when she saw me, then quickly said, couldn't sleep. I hesitated. Mom, why are you letting her do this? Her lips parted, then pressed shut. She shook her head slowly. It's complicated, Rachel. Complicated. My voice cracked. You're my mother. She looked at me with an ache in her eyes, something almost like guilt. Sometimes it's easier to let Emily take the lead. I realized then she wouldn't save me. Not because she couldn't, but because she wouldn't. And that broke something inside me, but it also hardened me. I could no longer wait for her defense. This was mine to fight. The following days were a blur of tension and secret preparation. I drafted my own speech in my notebook, one that didn't hide my pain but turned it into power. I wrote about growing up as the invisible daughter, about being overshadowed, mocked, treated like an afterthought. I wrote about resilience, about carving an identity from scraps of dismissal. And yes, I included the line Emily had highlighted, sometimes I feel like I'm invisible in this house. But I reframed it. I turned it from a shameful confession into a *p***n of truth. Every word was rehearsed in the mirror at night, my voice shaking, then steadying, then ringing with conviction. I imagined Emily's smug grin fading, the whispers of cousins silenced, the shock on my parents' faces. By Christmas Eve, the house was filled with guests. Laughter echoed, glasses clinked, and garlands glittered under warm light. Emily floated around like the star of the show, dressed in emerald silk, her eyes gleaming with the promise of what was to come. I sat quietly in the corner, my notebook tucked under the chair, my plan burning in my chest. Let them think I was still the silent shadow. Let them think I was weak. Because tomorrow, at dinner, I would speak first. Tomorrow, I would rewrite the script. Christmas Day arrived with a sky heavy with snow and a silence that felt like a held breath. I dressed slowly, hands trembling as I pulled on the deep blue dress I'd chosen. Simple, modest, but strong. I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "You are not their victim." The dining room glowed with candles and silverware polished to perfection. Guests filled the house, voices rising in cheerful tones, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. My parents bustled about, radiant hosts, while Emily shone in crimson, her hair styled into waves that made her look like she'd stepped from a holiday magazine cover. She was in her element, every laugh practiced, every glance calculated. I took my seat at the far end of the table, my notebook hidden under a folded napkin. Marcus had texted me that morning. "Remember, control the story. Don't wait for her strike. You set the tone." His words pulsed in my mind like a mantra. Dinner began. Platters of roast turkey, glazed carrots, and cranberry sauce were passed around, glasses raised in toasts. For a while, the performance of family harmony almost lulled me into forgetting what loomed ahead. But then Emily caught my eye across the table, her lips curving into a secret smile. She tapped her phone screen lightly, and I knew, the folder was ready, the ambush moments await, and my heart pounded. My fork clinked against the plate. I had seconds to decide, wait for her strike or claim my moment. I stood. The chatter quieted instantly, forks pausing mid-air, glasses suspended. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, surprised. My father frowned. My mother's lips parted in a faint gasp. Emily's smirk faltered, confusion flickering across her face. "I'd like to say something," I began, my voice trembling at first but growing steadier as I continued. "This year has been hard. And before my sister or anyone else decides to share parts of my life without my permission, I want to tell you my story myself." A murmur rippled through the table. Emily's knuckles whitened as she gripped her wine glass. I pulled the folded notebook from beneath my napkin and opened it, my hands no longer shaking. "Yes," I said, "there are messages, words I've written in private. Things I never meant for anyone else to read. And one of them says, sometimes I feel invisible in this house. Like they wouldn't notice if I disappeared." Gasps rose from the table. I met their eyes, one by one. It's true. That's how I've felt. Ignored, dismissed, overshadowed. I've been the punchline at my own family's table. But what those words don't show is why I wrote them. They came from years of being made small, from being told my dreams weren't big enough, from being treated as if my worth was less than my sister's shine. That is the reality I've lived. Emily shifted in her chair, fury flashing in her eyes. "Rachel," she began, but I cut her off. "No, Emily. Not tonight. You don't get to humiliate me. Not in front of them. Not ever again." The room was electric. My father's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent. My mother's hands trembled against her lap. Around the table, cousins stared wide-eyed, neighbors whispered in shock. I closed the notebook with a snap. If anyone here wants to judge me for being human, for struggling, for daring to put words to my pain, go ahead. But you'll hear it from me, not from someone twisting my life into entertainment. For a long moment, there was only silence, heavy and thick. Then Aunt Claire, sitting halfway down the table, spoke softly. "Rachel, thank you. That was brave." Others nodded. A few clapped gently. The tide was shifting, the script rewritten before Emily ever touched her phone. Emily's face burned crimson. She stood abruptly, knocking over her glass, wine spilling across the white tablecloth. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "She's making herself the victim as always." But the room didn't rally to her. Instead, eyes turned cold toward her, whispers questioning her motives. And for the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes, the fear of losing control. My father muttered something under his breath and stormed from the room. My mother remained seated, eyes shining with something between regret and shame. Emily followed soon after, slamming the door behind her. I stayed. The table slowly came back to life, but differently now. Cousins leaned closer, asking about my art classes. Neighbors offered quiet words of encouragement. I had stepped into the fire, and I had not been burned. That night, as the snow fell thick and silent outside, I realized the final showdown wasn't about destroying Emily or exposing my parents. It was about taking back my voice, my story. And in front of everyone who had once seen me as background, I had finally been heard. The house was quieter after that night, not because of peace but because the illusion had been shattered. My father barely spoke to me, stomping through the halls with the weight of a man whose authority had cracked in public. My mother avoided my eyes, retreating into endless chores, wiping counters that were already spotless. And Emily, she locked herself in her room, her door slamming so hard it rattled the ornaments on the tree. But something had changed forever. The next morning, as I walked into the kitchen, I found cousins waiting with soft smiles and words I had never expected. "You were so brave, Rachel. I had no idea what you've been dealing with. Don't let them make you small again." It was subtle, but I felt the shift. People saw me differently now. Not as the quiet afterthought, but as someone who had spoken truth against a wall of cruelty. Emily emerged hours later, her face blotchy, her pride clearly wounded. She didn't meet my eyes. For once, she had no sharp remark, no smug laughter. She simply gathered her things, muttered something about going back to Boston early, and disappeared out the door into the snow. I watched her car taillights fade, and instead of triumph, I felt an unexpected calm. I hadn't destroyed her. I had simply refused to let her destroy me. Mom cornered me later that day. Her voice was fragile, threaded with guilt. "Rachel, you have to understand, keeping the peace, it felt easier than fighting. I thought if Emily had her way, things would stay smooth." I looked at her, really looked, and realized she wasn't ready to admit the cost of her silence. Maybe she never would. But I was done carrying that weight for her. "Your silence hurt me more than Emily's words ever could," I told her. She didn't argue. She just nodded, eyes glassy, and walked away. Dad never apologized. He never explained. For him, power was the only language he knew, and I had spoken a different one. The distance between us grew like ice on a lake, silent and thick, and I decided not to step onto it again. When the holidays ended, I packed my bag with more than just clothes. I carried the notebook I had read from, filled now with new pages, not of pain, but of plans. I was going back to my community center, to my students, to the art that gave me voice when words failed. And I was carrying something else, too, the knowledge that I was not invisible, not anymore. Marcus met me at the station when I returned to town. He pulled me into a hug and whispered, "You did it. You stopped them before they could break you." I smiled for the first time in weeks, a real smile, not forced. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt myself. My art program grew. I shared my story, carefully, with people who needed to hear it, and discovered others who had felt invisible in their own families. Together, we found strength in the act of speaking. Christmas used to mean silence for me. Smiles painted on for the sake of appearances, words swallowed like bitter medicine. But this Christmas, something changed. They tried to script my humiliation. I rewrote the ending. And as I stood in my small apartment weeks later, hanging a string of lights above the window, I whispered a promise to myself. Never again will I stay quiet just to make others comfortable. Because silence had once been my cage. Now, my voice was my freedom.